this is a social network. It is not a place to be precious, to overthink things, to, if you look at a lot of what happened in Web3 and digital art is the sales and the mentality of having to sell. I think it just caused everything to grind to a halt, right? What's the price? What's the market? How long? How am I going to sell it? And you could just see people get stuck. And they stopped being creative. They stopped being in the flow. They stopped being in the moment.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode. Today, I had a great conversation with Kayvon, who is the co-founder of Foundation and recently launched Rodeo, a new social media app which allows for genuine and new on-chain experiences. We had a great discussion about the inspiration behind the app, the different dynamics, and the state of digital art and consumer crypto. Thanks again for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and like the podcast.
Kayvon, it's so great to have you on the show. How are you? How are you today?
Callo, it feels like a real familiar territory. I'm happy to be here. Not my first rodeo, as we like to say,
Yeah.
but you're the first person that I'm going to speak to about this new product.
Yeah, so excited to hear your thoughts. We have been chatting a bit about it, and you're right. It's your second time in the show. Seth Goldstein from Bright Moments was in the
Yep,
show twice. Now you're the
yep.
second person coming back, so it's so great to have you here.
I think the two timers on your podcast will have to be a group.
Yeah, I think that's when I started the podcast, and I've been studying other podcasts, and if you want to do this for a while, you cannot have new guests every time. It's great to build kind of a group of recurrent guests that are in the space, that are doing new things, and get their thoughts over time. I think that's very very important. And for those that haven't listened the first episode, it's quite interesting. We went so back from your background, from your early work, how you started Foundation, some decisions on the product, what you were doing at the time. So anybody that wants to hear the whole story behind what you have been doing in the space for the last years, I recommend to listen to that one. It's on at one of the first ones actually. So today we actually want to talk about rodeo. So
Yep.
Kayvon, what's rodeo for those that haven't seen it?
Callo, just to quickly build on your previous point, I think the fact that I've been on here twice and the last time we talked about Foundation, I think that's going to be a good compliment because the only way you get to rodeo is through Foundation. And what is Rodeo? It's a new on-chain social network, right? So if Foundation is a digital art marketplace, people are buying and selling digital art. Rodeo is designed very differently. It is trying to build a social network where the behaviors and mechanics are on-chain.
Mm,
And so it's something very distinct. It's very new. I don't think it is fully understood, fully explored, and it is barely out in the world. And so I think it's a very interesting moment for us to have a conversation because I think we've learned a few things, but it is something net new, right?
hmm
It is something that I think we're all wrangling with and exploring and trying to understand. Um, but it is a social network. It's architected as a social network. It looks like a social network. It looks like social networks you might have used in Web 2,
hmm
intentionally.
Yep.
And it's something that is exploring different behaviors in the space. So I think it's something that we'll really have a lot of fun digging into. Full caveat, Callow, I don't have all the answers, right? I'm figuring this out in a lot of ways alongside everyone that's kind of now part of the journey.
Yep.
But I'm happy to share my thinking and my thoughts in my own
hmm
process and invite other people to kind of join us and explore this kind of new frontier.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Also from the first conversation we had, it was clear to me that you are somebody that is very experimental, right? You try to try things out, see what happens, and then come back and build on those new things. So I'm sure that's the same path you are taking with rodeo, right? Trying to understand what behaviors are sticking to with people enjoy, they are having fun with, and that will kind of dictate the evolution of this social network. The product is closed, right? It's you have to get an invite, right? So many
Yep.
people haven't been there. I was looking at the numbers. I think you have how many users so far? I think over 1,000 already.
Yeah, it's still very small. The invite system is going away soon,
Mhm.
Carlo, so it's almost ready for prime time. That should be happening in the next couple of weeks. So my hope is people are going to listen to this podcast and be able to access it very shortly.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, it's a very tight, small community. It's kind of 500 or so daily active users and maybe 1,000 people that have been kind of, you know, given access to it so far. So we're in the really early days.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember from Foundation that was kind of the same way how Foundation started, right, with the invite system, and
Yep,
it's a great way to curate, right, your early users, and also make sure the platform is working properly, right, and
correct.
everything is up to speed. What can people that haven't tried yet expect? Can you tell us, because it's a social network, but what can they do there? What's like the concept behind Rodeo in this stage?
If people haven't, I would imagine most of your community is probably on Farcaster at this point. I think that's the beginning of Web3 social in a lot of ways. We now have these, and I think they call themselves a sufficiently decentralized social network.
Yep.
But what they've introduced into the ecosystem is a new set of primitives. So you've built your friend, you found your friends, you've put them into a graph. We can talk technically, we can talk simply, but graph would be the technical term, friends would be the simple term. Um, but you now have these primitives. So the way that Rodeo works and the way I think about it is you show up, you log in, and you are going to be brought into a visual social network. So if Warpcast is Twitter, right?
Mhm.
And I think we all know that to be true. You now log into Rodeo, and you will bring all your Farcaster friends with you, and you'll be brought into what would be like Tumblr or Instagram, and maybe eventually TikTok, right? So visual content, visual aesthetic, image based, video based content and feeds.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really powerful is the whole thing's on chain. So you come in and you're having net new experiences, Callow, right? It's something where, and I've done this, and I just came back from Fest and Basecamp, onboarding people IRL, and you log in and you're instantly brought into a network where, if your friends are already there, you find them instantly. There's no setting up your profile. There's no connecting your account. It
Yeah.
just works, and your friends are there, and then the feed just kind of you know is instantly
Mhm.
social because the people that are in that feed. You're seeing them engage and interact, and you're there in seconds,
Yeah.
right? It's just an unbelievably net new experience. And then the behavior is we've taken minting as kind of an activity that we've been doing in the space now for years and tried to make it the core primitive of a social network. So instead of me just liking or engaging with you without any sort of economic rails,
Yeah.
we can now use the blockchain to say, hey, if I want to engage with this post, this piece of content on this network, I need to actually pay. I need to actually honor the person who's contributed to the network. And I think this is a fundamentally new behavior that we are introducing. And it's really exciting because we just don't know how far it can go. But I think you feel this and you probably have experienced this. It's quite fun.
Yeah.
The money is quite small. It's not something that's going to get in the way of anyone who's probably active in Web3. It's almost like a quarter
Yeah.
in American terms. It's about a quarter of cost. So it's something that people I think are very comfortable exchanging with each other. And
Yeah.
then you're often dealing with people right? It's a social network. It's not strangers. So it's often artists or other collectors or curators or tastemakers or people from the community, and you're seeing them, and instead of really just engaging in a much more superficial way, you're starting to really give them economic and financial rewards to their contributions. And that goes many ways. And we can talk about this, Kalo. It's like it's not just posting that gets rewards, it's also the curation element of you
Yeah.
offering your taste and your attention. So it's a new social network. It's going to feel really magical to a lot of people that I think haven't had this kind of Web3 experience yet, where you come in, your whole identity comes with you, your friends come with you, it works out of the box
Yeah.
super fast. And then instead of doing these sort of like very old Web 2 sort of behaviors, there's net new behaviors here where people are making money, they're being compensated. And I think, my hope and my vision is that this produces a much higher quality
Hmm.
experience for the people that make social networks valuable,
Yeah.
the creative people that really put their time, energy, and attention into these things. they're paid and compensated immediately for everything that they do. And that's really, 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 really powerful.
There is something special about getting paid, even if it's a small amount, as you said. It's kind of a reward, a validation of what you are doing, right? That's very, very special. I have some thoughts on the monetization, right?
Yes,
And
please share them. I'm always interested to hear from people.
yeah, so I think something that's really interesting about the monetization part is that for the rodeo, and I don't know if you call it a protocol, because is it a protocol? Is it an app? Does it matter at all? What are your thoughts there? And I'll get to the question on monetization, but that's something I'm
So,
curious.
so, so that's a big question, Carlo. Absolutely, it's a protocol. Because why is it a protocol? It's not our team manually giving out payments, right? You are plugging into a set of smart contracts that are going to guarantee trustlessly, all the value props that we've come to appreciate about Web3. These payment systems are encoded into the protocol,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to trust our team to get the money. And Carlo, I think this point really matters because imagine Rodeo becomes a big social network like you have in Web 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to play out differently because instead of having to fight the platform
Yep.
and hope that things work out, you know that the protocol guarantees how the platform will behave. And
Exactly.
and so it's very, very exciting. But I think, Carlo, here's the difference, and I think this is something that I feel passionate about, is we're not trying to lecture you about the product. That's not how you get people to have fun and use apps. Yes, there's a protocol. It's powerful, it's elegant, it's simple, but, and I think you imagine this too, if we go out there and just lecture people about using apps with protocols, I don't know why they would use it.
Yeah.
It's not interesting to them, right?
Yeah.
The things they want are their friends. They want to be compensated. They want to have fun with their friends. And so when you use Rodeo, and I think you imagine feeling this way, you often forget about the protocol. It's not
Yeah.
something that you're thinking about that often. It just works.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Like it's more about the experience, the use case. You don't see these successful apps like Pinterest, Instagram, right, talking about their technology at all. But now
Correct.
maybe a little bit with AI now, but it's not the
But even with
centerpiece.
AI, no one
Yeah.
wants AI. They want, what is the use case? What are you giving people that makes their lives better, makes it more fun, gives them more time to be with friends, to
Hmm.
make more money? These are the things they care about. And so I feel
Yeah.
strongly about this, which is yes, Adam, I can tell you as a person who's been building in this space, 100% it's a protocol that
Yeah.
will matter, that makes a huge difference. But at the same time, I'm not going to get up and lecture people endlessly about the protocol. I want to build something that people have fun using. And
Yeah.
I think that is the most important thing to be doing right now.
The protocol came to mind because something that's really powerful in the way how Rodeo, because it's already making money, right? There is a Dune dashboard showing the earnings from the protocol, right? That this is
Yes, yep,
happening automatically, the same as creators and collectors are getting rewarded. When you talk about social media apps, and the way how it works in Web 2, it's basically everything, they monetize ads, right? Advertisement. And
yep,
I've been using Instagram personally, like from my personal account for a long time, and now with Calo not so long ago. But it's just so annoying now. Every seven posts, like 7 out of 10 are ads or
yep,
sponsor content.
yep,
And why? Well, because that's how Instagram makes money, right? That will not change in those social apps, right? That's how they monetize. In the case of Rodeo protocol, in the case of also we could think about Farcaster, that's not the business model, right? That's not the core business model. And I think that will and maybe I would like to hear from you, that give you more flexibility, right? Because you are earning when creators earn or when collectors earn, right?
correct.
Not through this massive media company that advertise products and stuff. So is that something that you think gives you more freedom to experiment and to actually do better for the users and the creators and the collectors?
So, Callow, I think that's the experiment we're running. And I think the thing that I think should excite people, and I imagine would excite you, is we don't know. We don't know, but we know that it will, we know that it is a different path. We know that much, right? We know that if it was Web 2, we know we would have to eventually get to the point where we would run an ads business model.
Yeah,
And we've seen that play out enough and we know it. And I think I don't think we need another network built that way.
yeah,
And
definitely.
so I think the really interesting thing that we're running here that I think will be fun to really see play out is what happens when a protocol powers a social network, and what is the outcome, and what does it produce for people, and what does that mean for technology and these kind of new social networks. And very well, Kahlo, and we don't know this, but this will be something that this is what we're trying to do, is this might offer a 10x better experience.
Yeah,
If everyone is compensated directly by a protocol, and you know exactly how it works, including the kind of platform that's building it, can you trust that platform more? Can you do more interesting things on it? Can you, right? I mean, I think that's the really interesting thing. And so far, you yourself are on the platform and the app. It feels quite good, right? I mean, I think people are all being compensated for what they're doing correctly. Um, and you could see this just becoming the dominant paradigm of how people want to engage online. And I think that's really exciting.
I have shared some things, and I'm not an artist, right? More like a creator. I create media, I create articles. I have a podcast, so I have been monetizing my content, and also through the rewards, so the referral rewards, and
Yes.
maybe I want to understand. So two things come to mind. First, the referral rewards, the 24-hour limits.
Yes.
What are your thoughts there on the limits, the time limits? Is that something that you think is critical for Rodeo? Have you thought about maybe experimented with other time limits? And yeah, the referral reward system is quite interesting. Can you tell us a bit about that system for those that haven't tried yet?
I'm very excited to share that. Well, you're calling these things out, Callow, and I think the thing that's really fun is these are net new things that we introduced to the ecosystem, right? Nobody was really doing this prior to Rodeo launching, and I think the thing I'd share with you is it's been a big success, right? So, on the 24-hour limit, the answer is we're quite happy with it. And I think that the thinking is that this is a social network. It is not a place to be precious, to overthink things, to, if you look at a lot of what happened in Web3 and digital art, is the sales and the mentality of having to sell. I think it just caused everything to grind to a halt,
Mm.
right? What's the price? What's the market? How long? How am I going to sell it? And you could just see people get stuck,
Yeah.
and they stopped being creative. They stopped being in the flow. They stopped being in the moment. And so if you think about the decision there, I think it was a very bold one. I don't think any platform had ever considered doing something as kind of opinionated as that.
Mm.
But what I think it's done is it's pushed people into the moment, right? Posting on Rodeo is not about producing the most perfect work you've ever created in your life, right? It is a social network. People want to know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing right now, right?
Yeah.
What's on your mind? Kind of is the kind of the prompt. And so I think the 24-hour window says you put something on Rodeo, it's going to be available for 24 hours. Don't overthink it. It's not permanent, right? In the sense that it's something that you're trying to sell perfectly. It's if people resonate with it, they're going to mint it.
Yeah.
And then for collectors, I think it's also really interesting, which is you need to be plugged in.
Yeah.
Rodeo is a place where things are happening every day. Every day, new ideas, new concepts, new posts are coming out of the network.
Yeah.
And you need to be there if you want to be like a early collector, you want to be in the know, which is a huge part of, I think, the game and how Rodeo works. You have to be there, right? It's not something where it's always available. And I think
Exactly.
that's powerful. And I think it introduces real scarcity. I think people have this concept that scarcity has to be, it only can be unique or what have you. And I think the new form of scarcity that Rodeo is introducing was, were you there? Were you
Yeah.
there? Were you plugged in? And it can be a lot of people, but at the end of the day, not everybody's there in that time window.
Yeah, yeah, I think you define it quite well. So it removes some of the pressure of these high-end art sales, right? Like
Yes.
big collections. How much should I price this? The Dutch auction systems that are very, those for artists releasing their work, uh, they produce a lot of anxiety, right? And if you are
Yes.
working with a gallery, for the galleries too, right? They are, how much will we sell? Will we sold out? And with Rodeo, you remove that pressure from the creators. It's 24 hours, and that's it. There, you can always create another piece. It's not something that it's more fun, more friendly. Like you shouldn't be spending days into one piece. Maybe if you want, right? But it's more like something casual. And on the other side, you do put a little bit of pressure on collectors, right? Like, you have to be there to mint. It's 24 hours. If you miss, you miss. Um, and that takes me to the secondary market, Kayvon, because I've seen this in the past in other platforms where, there are some primary sales, but eventually people want to collect on the secondary market. And there are, speculators trying to, collect things and maybe resell. What are your thoughts on that? On the secondary market, will there be a secondary market? Do you think that's critical? Do you think it's not? Because I've seen already offers on other platforms that have Rodeo NFTs like OpenSea. You can place, you can buy items, but not on Rodeo right now. And what are your thoughts there in terms of secondary market?
Callow, I think I have two answers. And one is, will there be a secondary for these posts? Absolutely. Because people are getting confused. They often say, oh, there's no scarcity. There is scarcity.
Mm.
Very few people are actually often there at the right moment to mint,
Yeah.
right? And you're already seeing this. There are posts that are now becoming famous
Mhm.
and people want to own them and they have to go to the secondary because the time window is closed, and that's happening, right? So yes, I think that is a feature of Web3. It's a protocol, it's composable, right? There's the Rodeo talks to all of the systems that you expect in Web3 because it's built correctly.
Yeah.
And so you will see Rodeo posts that go on to become highly valuable on the secondary. For Rodeo as an app and an experience, I do not want the secondary currently baked into the product because that is not the point of Rodeo, right? Rodeo is not about the secondary. It's not about trading. It's not about flipping. It's not, these are all behaviors that already exist in Web3 and they can happen elsewhere. And there's products for that. Rodeo is social, right? And it is something that you're engaging with in the moment, right? And obviously these things will change over time. And maybe I come on the next podcast and who knows when, and we'll talk about how it evolved. But right now, that is not a focus,
Yeah.
right? And the platforms that do the secondary trading can work with Rodeo perfectly, right?
Yeah.
There's no issue.
Yeah.
So the way I think about it, Callo, is like the people that want to engage in that behavior, they absolutely can. But I think that that is not something that I think you want in the Rodeo app itself right now. It doesn't. It really changes people's mentality, and I think that's the big thing that Rodeo has unlocked for people, which is it's made Web3 fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think what you can see what happens when we take fun out of the equation is I think people are quite miserable. They're anxious, they're overthinking everything, and the world suffers because you lose their creativity, their ideas, their concepts.
Mm.
And I think that's something I really value, and I'm very proud of the fact that Rodeo has kind of brought that energy back to the space.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's very smart. I know I can post offers or I could buy pieces on secondary market, but it's just it's not fun to go to another platform, place an offer, and so I haven't done that. I just prefer to keep collecting, new pieces at the moment. So
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense.
And I'm
And
not saying never, Kahlo. I just think it's, we're at this very specific moment in time and we're talking. Um, and I just want to be clear, it's not a priority,
yeah,
right? So, I think the community, probably a lot of people in this podcast are on the app. And I am trying to be very clear with people. It isn't, we're not trying to turn it into a marketplace,
yeah,
right?
okay.
I think the more that people kind of start to demand it look like a marketplace,
Mm,
you are going to very quickly end up back to where we
yeah,
were before, and I personally don't want to go back there, right?
yeah,
I think it's not productive for the space. We need net new things that grow the
yeah.
ecosystem, not shrink the ecosystem.
No, I fully agree there. That's a great thought. Yeah, we don't need another eBay, right? We don't need another marketplace right now.
Correct. I've already built Foundation. We have Foundation, right? Like it's a marketplace, right? It has
Yeah,
all the features. You can auction things off and
yeah,
Dutch auctions and all these features that we wanted when we wanted marketplaces. Those exist. We have all of them. We have many of them. Um, and I think what this is really about is exploring the new frontier, right? Something that's really net new. And Calla, if you really were to ask me, like my biggest hope is I hope it massively grows the number of people interested in the broader ecosystem.
yeah,
I think like a big thing that got stuck on is I think a lot of people did not understand digital ownership. And I don't think a marketplace is going to get more people to understand it. I think you have to have new experiences that are more fun, that
yeah.
are more social, that bring people in and get them to appreciate how digital ownership can impact their life.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big believer. Even if I'm not a gamer, I think gaming could do that in a way. And
Yep.
also, NBA Top Shot. That's another kind of experience where you actually understand. It's clear why you want to collect, right? And yeah, I feel like Rodeo has a chance to become that experience, right? That it's not a marketplace and it's fun. Maybe I want to touch on Foundation. I have some questions about Foundation, but before that, scarcity. I wrote an article recently about the king of collectibles. It's a Netflix TV show.
Yep.
While I was watching that, I was very surprised on the cards, the sports cards and all these sort of collectibles from history. I kind of made a comparison to the NFT space. Scarcity, like 100 editions, could be like super scarce in 5 years, in 10 years. And I think people don't realize how there are things happening. People forget about their items, wallets get lost, you lose access, you don't care anymore, and then it's super scarce. And this happened with the most popular collectibles from the 40s, from the 50s, from the 60s. On that point, when people mention, oh, scarcity is important, which I think it is, but what is your answer to this unlimited means? Is Rodeo trying to maybe create something that it's super exclusive? You think that's needed, like only 5 minutes, like limiting, giving more options to the creator?
So the scarcity is time based, right? And I think that's what makes it really fun and interesting. And I think you're right. I think scarcity is relative. I don't think we try to push scarcity top of mind. It's not something we're obsessed with, and I think the space potentially is overly obsessed with it because it's trying to create markets.
Hmm.
But Callow, the big thing that I would push on is I think the way to build the most interesting markets is to expand the number of people that are participating by orders of magnitude. And so if you often think about it, if we can get social networks to get into the hundreds of millions of users, and you imagine only 100 people owning certain posts, that's extremely scarce, right? There's 150 million people on the social network, and there's only 100 that own this post, right? And so I think you'll have that sort of behavior if we can grow these things. And so I think people have a very limited sense of how the scarcity can work. And it's often looking at the space as if it's static, right? That is, if the dynamics that we have right now are the only ones we can have. And I think why the space has started to shrink or grow less relevant is because that mentality drove it to shrink. Whereas I think if you can figure out how to get hundreds of millions of people to participate in these networks, you can expose and explore entirely new dynamics,
Yep.
right? And the concept of having 100 of something is very scarce because there'll be things that millions of people have, right? And I think these will be all very interesting dynamics that will play out if we can really start to change and grow the space, which is really, really what's driving us. There's been just now a handful of players that are really remaining in the industry, and they're kind of all fighting over a fixed pie. Um, that mentality is not going to lead us to a new sort of era, a new chapter.
Yep.
And you're going to need bold thinking. You're going to need different. The fact that people are perhaps somewhat I don't know, irritated or challenged by some of these new dynamics we've introduced, I think that's productive because we need new ideas to really imagine a new industry.
Yep.
And I really fundamentally believe that what we're doing is going to grow, or at least, we're going to do our damn best to try to grow the industry. And I think that's the healthiest thing we can be doing. It's a
Yeah.
very small industry still.
I had the conversation with Coop
Yep.
last 2 weeks ago, and yeah, one of his worries was that we are like 100,000 people in total that actively engage in the blockchain and what we call consumer crypto, and that's what we need to grow, right? And
Yep.
I think that's clear. You have that in mind, and Rodeo, it's kind of a good way to do that. It's a different platform thinking on growing and providing fun activities, fun experiences. I see a lot of artists in, what we call high end, let's call it high end digital art. And I know you know this space very well because you are the founder of Foundation, and
Yep.
you have so many, generative artists, AI artists there. And they see Rodeo, and I think they are looking, some of them, not all, because there are many artists already on Rodeo.
Correct.
They are missing the point that Rodeo is not necessarily for art only. It's not necessarily for, this sort of high-end art. Rodeo can be used for many things, right? I just minted
Correct.
a quote. You can mint, I don't know, an article. So it could potentially be for anything, like Instagram is, right? Like TikTok is. So what would you tell artists, these artists that have a career, They have, some of them very successful careers over the past 3 years, and are reluctant to mentor Rodeo. And yeah, what are your thoughts then, or high end art, what you see on Foundation with what you see on Rodeo, which is more accessible creations? How do you difference both?
So yeah, Kyle, I think that's spot on, which is Rodeo is a social network. So you want to put out content and post things that people in your network, in your audience, in your community are interested in. And the new behavior is that you're compensated for that. It's not just doing it for free. All these artists are already doing this. They're posting to these networks all the time their content for free,
Mhm.
right? So on Rodeo, you have an upgrade. It is not a marketplace. So I do not ask that people put their work up and try to sell it on Rodeo. It's a place, I think, and the way I framed it is it's a place to resonate. So sharing process, sharing whips, sharing behind the scenes, sharing things that you weren't going to sell, sharing artifacts that maybe got cut along the way, things that tell the story and the journey, right? I think it is something where we've just decided that minting can only be one thing. And I think that's a very limited view of the world,
Mm.
right? And you're already using social networks that don't have these Web3 properties. Why aren't you building in an on-chain context? Why aren't you really talking to people, right, in a social context that are truly bought into digital ownership, decentralization,
Mhm.
permissionlessness, right? These things that we all value, that we're in the space for, we can now build social networks that have these properties. And yes, it is not an art marketplace, right? But minting does not need to mean one thing. And so, if you look at Foundation, you look at Rodeo, and I think why I can be a very credible spokesman for this sort of narrative is I've built a product where it is designed to sell your work,
Mhm.
right? That is what Foundation is designed to do. If you were to come into the design process for Rodeo, we asked ourselves, what if you did the opposite?
Mhm.
Everything that you look at Rodeo is the opposite of Foundation. It is a different token standard, it is a different mechanic, it's a different design, it's a different user experience, right? It's just built fundamentally differently. And so I think, people might just need time
Mm.
to process this and to understand it. But you can see a lot of people have very quickly adopted it because they understand the potential,
Yeah.
right? Posting on Web 2, if you post something on Instagram and you are trying to really embrace NFTs and digital ownership and Web 3, posting on Instagram is pointless.
Yeah.
Nobody there cares,
Yeah.
right? How many collectors are going to convert into your work on Instagram? I don't think any,
Mhm.
right? Whereas now on Rodeo, you can really post and build up an audience. You can build up fans. They can compensate you for your process and your journey. And then when you go to actually build something that you want to sell at a higher price point, we have products like Foundation that are designed to do that.
Mm.
And so I think of these as complementary. I think of them as symbiotic. And not only that, Carlo, I think they're necessary. I think Web2 social networks are trying to crush Web3. I don't think they want you to have all of these
Yeah.
experiences and power, right? It goes against their design, right? They're walled gardens. They don't want you to leave. And
Yeah.
so, I think people need to look at the bigger picture, and zoom out and realize they're already contributing to these networks with their content and with their work, and they're not being compensated, and they're not really tapping into on-chain audiences that are going to ultimately power their careers,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And Carl, I'd love to hear from you on this front. But like, I mean, I think that's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just a matter of time before people kind of understand it. But you can see, and you're on there. It's like it's really fun. I mean, there's a lot of artists who I've admired, who I've followed on Foundation, and I'm instantly getting access to them on Rodeo in totally new ways that feels interesting, fresh, exciting. I'm even more engrossed in their work. I'm even more engrossed in their story. And that's really good for the artist because that's what they need to really ultimately build a market in the long run.
Yeah.
And then I think one other point I'll add, Carlo, is I don't want to over rotate on artists as well. I don't think Rodeo is designed, and you'll see this as the product evolves. It's not just for art. I don't think that we start with art because that's our forte, right? And that's our community, and that's who we know how to, that's who we can really talk to and bring into this world. But you've talked about you posting. I
Mm.
post, right?
Yeah.
I was never selling art on Foundation. That
Mhm.
wasn't something I don't consider myself a full-time artist, so I don't think it would be. I don't know why I would use that product, but
Mm.
I have fun posts. right? And I love posting on Rodeo. Like I was at Fest and there's a cool, there was this exhibit and
Yeah.
an installation, and it kind of output this cool artifact. And I was like, I want to put this on chain, right?
Yeah.
I want other people to be able to see this, and I want to use this. I want to engage with my friends,
Yes.
and that's what I did, and that's who minted it, right?
Hmm.
People that I know, and so I think there's really new dynamics to explore here, and so I hear the apprehension. I don't think it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's just a matter of time until people kind of understand these new
Yeah.
behaviors and new powers. And I think they'll embrace them once they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I really like the comparison you're making. That people are already using Web2 platforms. They are not getting compensated. And Rodeo, it's the same functionality, kind of to get exposure, to show your process, to share what you're doing, but getting compensated in the meantime in a fully Web3 way, where your audience, crypto native audience is. And I think the drawback from that, when I hear the drawback, so I personally, I don't, when I create things on chain, I scarcity doesn't matter to me that much, right? Because
Yes.
I'm same as you. I'm not a full time artist, right? So when it comes to creators that are trying to, feed into the high end art world, I think the problem there is, or the drawback is, that they might consider that it could be that so many editions, so many pieces of work, then could devaluate or bring the value down from other pieces, right? Other collections. And what you're saying is, well, but you are looking at it wrong. Just because it's on the blockchain doesn't mean it's kind of considered your fine work. It's a difference between what you mint on Foundation and what you mint on Rodeo. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really net new context. And I think the one thing I'd even just say is never mind contributing to Web2 networks with your content for free. Imagine that you actually do want to build these audiences to sell higher end pieces. I've mentioned this before, but like you're not getting the conversion from Web 2 into Web 3. That's dying,
Yeah.
right? And so I think if you really have a vision of wanting to establish yourself in this new world and really wanting to sell these in the higher end contexts, we better build distribution channels and networks that are on chain because Web 2 and Web 3 are fundamentally at odds in a lot of ways. They're built entirely different. And so it's very short-sighted to say that we don't need these things or that they're at odds with my other goals,
Yeah.
right? And again, I think Kavo, I think the credibility and weight I can bring is I didn't just arrive here having not gone through the other part of the thought process.
Yeah.
I have potentially some of them. I probably have some of the most significant experience in the other context to know that this is necessary, critical, and important.
I agree. I agree fully on the distribution side of things, and I know that Foundation, you are doing it at the moment. You have built some of the most powerful features in the digital art world. You have collaborated with many artists, and you really understand that part of the space.
Market, yep.
Yeah, on the market. And I think you answered my what I wanted to ask you about synergies with Foundation. I think I see it clearly now. It's different products. Foundation is more for artistic experiences, more towards a high end market, right? And my question is, do you feel there will be like a closer gap between both products, like a connectivity between my Rodeo profile and Foundation, or you think they will evolve independently? Hello, guys. I just wanted to take some time to remind you about my NFT subscription via Hypersub. All subscribers get access to my token gated newsletter articles. You also get the podcast episodes airdropped into your crypto wallet. 8% of the revenue is shared across all subscribers. You also get access to my Discord server and participate in monthly giveaways and allow list opportunities. You can cancel at any time, and also you can control the length. You can go on a month to month basis, or you can get a whole year at once. This is also how I can keep going with the newsletter and podcast, and your support really means a lot. Find the link in the show notes below, and you can always DM me through my social networks if you have any questions. Thanks for your support.
I believe they will evolve independently. And the reason why, Callow goes back to the protocol talking point, which is I wouldn't want Foundation to receive over time, if Rodeo becomes what we believe it can be, it needs to be treated as a protocol, which means that people can talk to it permissionlessly, people can integrate with it, right? And it's not a toy for Foundation.App, right? I think that would not be a good end state for the product.
Mm.
I do think that the marketplaces, of which Foundation is one, will all integrate with Rodeo, right? Because I think you will want to, as you mentioned, talk to these other places, and for example, FX Hash and Highlight want to really tap into the communities that are very sort of engaged on Rodeo, because the generative art community is one of the first communities to adopt the product. But no, I want them to be, and the reason the branding and the domain, and you can really sense this in the product design as well, is like it's very different.
Yes.
And that's something that we had to come to grips with. That wasn't how we started. We wanted to kind of bake it into Foundation, but in the process, we realized, one is a high-end digital art marketplace and was designed for that, and the other is really trying to broaden and massively expand the number of people engaging in sort of digital collecting behavior. And they're just not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, I don't see us in the immediate term really trying to integrate the two products. I think it would do a disservice to the potential of Rodeo, and I wouldn't want the community to perceive it. I would want all platforms to feel like they could really talk to Rodeo and benefit from Rodeo, not for it to feel like a overly kind of connected to Foundation.App sort of integration.
Yeah, yeah, and it's different, right? You define it very well. It's the rodeo. It's kind of for the goal is it's fun for everybody, and
Yes.
um, that makes a lot of sense, Kayvon. And there is a topic I've been asking guests recently that probably is in your mind. It's so two things: the state of the digital art market, and how do we grow from here? Because it feels, how do we bring people on chain? And of course, you might not have the all the answers, but yeah, I wanted to hear from what do you expect to happen? What do you think should happen? What are you worried about in terms of growth for the space to have more people active on chain, to have people having fun using Rodeo? What are your thoughts? How can we get more users, more collectors, more artists?
Oh, I think this is another point where we constantly intersect. And so I think this is a great discussion point, because this was something that really worried me. When
Mm,
we met in Paris
mm,
a few months ago, I think that was when I really realized we needed to change,
mm,
because as much fun as Paris was and seeing everybody, there weren't enough new people,
mm.
right? And I think when the market was really struggling and wasn't growing, if something stays niche and insular, it just can't grow. And so I really felt stuck in that moment, because I was having fun. I was with all the people that I admire and enjoy working with, but it didn't feel new. It felt like a reunion. And I think that this is something that was concerning to me, because I'd been in the industry for years. And so this was something where I really went back to the drawing board after that conference.
Mhm.
And that's really when we began the process of really designing Rodeo. It didn't just spontaneously happen. It took months to kind of concept it and arrive at it. But again, Carlos, this is one of the things where we don't have the answer. But I knew that a new direction and a new bet and a new framework was necessary. And I think the only thing you can do in my position is take a bet,
Mm.
right? And I don't know if it's the right bet. I don't know how long this can go for. All I know is it's the bet we're taking. And so far, it's really exciting, and I think this conversation captures that, which is there's really new properties here, and I think we're taking things like minting and NFTs and decentralization and permissionlessness, all these concepts that you and I, care about and take to heart, and we're trying to put them into an experience where we don't lecture people. We just bring them into an experience that's fun. It's fun. It's lightweight. It's with your friends. It's social.
Yeah.
We're going to make it more social, Kala. Like, it's still very early. I think people, the way I think about it is they know it's a social network, but they kind of want to make it a marketplace. And I think our goal is to say, nope, we're not going to make it a marketplace. We're going to make it even more social.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, we can really start to test the boundaries of how far can this go? How many more new people can be brought in? I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, this is our hope, and our vision that we've brought lots of new people into a context where they start to appreciate digital ownership, because digital ownership is the gateway into things like, I want to buy higher value digital art, right?
Yeah.
I think starting at the point where we're going to say, I want to buy $1 million digital art, it's a very hard concept because people don't even know why they should appreciate something that's digital to begin with.
Exactly.
And so if we get more people to start to embrace and understand this new world that's being built, the more that you have a population that can eventually be brought into more valuable contexts, right?
Yeah.
But waiting there and hoping that people just get there is not really a plan or a strategy. And I don't think it's working, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we felt really responsible as one of the earliest platforms to try to solve this problem.
I mean, it's just, you basically cut many of the stuff that's out there. Like, people don't have to make tough decisions, like how many editions, what's the pricing. It's a straightforward. The monetization aspect is immediate. You can see it immediately, right? When you refer somebody or when somebody collects. And right now, you're growing at a quite a fast pace, and there is still a lot of room to grow into what we have already in the on-chain space. What are your thoughts after, let's say, 6 months, 1 year from now? You keep developing the product, it's open to everyone. Have you considered strategies to bring people that are not really on chain at the moment, or you will wait a bit for that?
Kala, I want to take this moment to quickly, because you asked this question, we didn't drill into it, which is this referral mechanism.
Mm.
Because I just want to quickly explain this to people because it's new. It's something we introduced into the ecosystem. And I think the big thing that I wanted to call out, Kala, is like, we don't compensate just creation. I think this is really important. We compensate all the behaviors that are necessary to sustain the network. And so the referral mechanism, we like to call it a taste reward, because the way it works is the product is social, it's governed by a feed, right? And the way that we designed it is that if you're early, right, you're someone that's finding new content, new posts, you're taking a risk, you're the really early to mint it. That's actually work. That's valuable work to the ecosystem because you have real credibility, right? If you mint something, people are paying attention to that, right? And they trust that. And so the network is not just saying, well, we just take advantage of Callow, right? We don't, I hope he does that and we'll make some money. The network, the protocol, right, is saying Callow's taste is valuable. And so we're going to compensate it. So the more people that you influence to mint, right, in the feed by being very influential, which you are, the network, the protocol says we need to reward him for that, right? And again, it's a protocol. So this is something that happens automatically just by using the app, no questions asked.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really powerful. And I want people to see this, which is, I think people are kind of very hooked on, oh, we can get creators paid. That's not enough, because how are the creators getting paid? There's other people that have to want to mint and engage in that behavior. And so Rodeo is really unique. We were the first platform to do this. We're not going to be the last because I think it's quite a powerful mechanic. But we're rewarding all sides of the market. And I think people are really starting to realize, wow, this is our super special place where everyone is compensated, everyone's having fun. I don't know what your experience has been, but I'm at the point now where I'm so plugged into the community that I'm often minting very early, and I'm actually spending no money. In fact, I'm making money because I'm being rewarded by the network for supporting these people very early in the mint. And other people come in and follow, and I benefit from that to the point where, on Rodeo, it's very hard for me to quote unquote lose money, right? Because it's something where the network really values your use.
Yep. So in my case, I'm a numbers guy, and I've been checking, and I think I'm at the point of half. So I'm most of the time covering half of what I paid, right? And
yes,
but it's very, very, let's say, stable. And sometimes I've been covering the whole mint. So considering there are only, as you said, 500 active people in the network,
it's very impressive, right?
Yeah, it's very impressive. Let's put 3 zeros to that, and then
think about what happens. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I agree. And I think people haven't even. I often, you see me putting this on Warcast, people don't even understand this yet. We haven't even really pushed this to its limits and said, what can this do? Which I think is really exciting.
Because the referral system, what makes it unique is that it's not just the referral link that you share outside of Rodeo. It's
Correct.
basically everything in the feed, or if somebody sees a piece in the collection page and they collect from there, they get a fee. So it's everywhere in the app, right?
Correct. We're really, if you're minting something, and I think this is the design that we came with, is you're contributing to the network. Social networks are networks, right? The protocol is looking to compensate the people that are contributing to the network, right? If you were not in there, Kahlo, minting, how would the network sustain itself?
Yeah.
Right? So it has to compensate the people that are providing the value, and that's really net new. We've never really done this before in this way, and I think this is really powerful. And we don't know how far this model can go, but I think you feel this way. I know I feel this way. It's very promising,
Yeah.
right?
No.
And again, these things are not speculation. They're not trading. They're not gambling, right? At the end of the day, you're minting things that you want to own. You're supporting people that you're personally excited to support. And the people that you're influencing are people that you want to follow you and care about what you're doing, right? And these are social dynamics, not speculative dynamics, right? People aren't gambling on you, which is where I think the space gets very toxic and very zero sum. It's really a social network with economic rails. And I really, hope, you were mentioning, 6, 12 months. Your question was, where will we be? Kahlo, our vision is not just to take the people that already really appreciate these things. I've talked about this kind of multiple times in this interview. It's to get out of this bubble and to go talk to people that are already contributing to other networks and they're not being compensated. You just even take a platform like TikTok. I mean, I imagine if you go use this, you'll start to think this way. These people are producing the most valuable resource in the network, and it's very confusing how they get compensated.
Yeah.
Do they have to become an influencer? Do they need to sell merch? They need to sell, OnlyFans. It's just like there's a lot of confusion. And with Web3, I think you can really start to bring people in and say, the way I frame it is you're going to get paid and you're going to get paid immediately, right? And that's something that new. And then over time, it's not just that, it's you're empowered. You own this stuff. You can bring it anywhere. It's composable. It's permissionless. It's a protocol. You can trust it, right? Those things aren't things people want out of the gate, right? And I think that's where Web3 often goes wrong. But if you can get people in the door with a value prop, which I think Rodeo has, which is this is just better than something you're already doing, right? Then you can start to get into these really higher order concepts, which is, okay, you're making money now, and this network is not closed. You are in an open network. Your identity is yours. Your objects, your posts are yours, and no one can take them away from you, right? And now people are like, wow, how was I ever in that old world? What was I doing, right? And then, Kahlo, right, we're in a new world because hopefully, and maybe this number seems very big to people and they're shocked by it, but like hopefully that value prop is so appealing that hundreds of millions of people start to come in here. And then guess what? All these people that are really kind of concerned with the digital art market, they are going to have a digital art market that is 100x the size of what we have today.
I mean, it just takes a couple of these huge creators to try Rodeo and share it with their audience and then earn money directly. And then it's like a dominoes, right? Like they start to come. And as you said, this will power everything else that's happening on chain. And the artists that were on chain, they will notice that. And that already happened in 2021, right? The early ones. So all this new group of people coming in, they follow them. So yeah, no, I think it's I really like what your vision and what you have in mind. And I think it's the right way to go. And I think it's a net positive for everybody, right, in the space. It's anything that helps expand these what's happening on the blockchain and what's possible. It should be appreciated. Kayvon, I had a couple of questions from the audience. I asked if anybody had questions for you, and I got two that are very interesting. So one is from Samir. Why did you? I think you touched on this already, but it was why did you choose Farcaster to build on top of Farcaster? What were the reasons?
So I think this is, I talked about this in the announcement that I made when we first announced Rodeo, which is I think the tech stack in Web3 has totally changed. And I think that's why also the product had to be built differently, which was Foundation had to build its own graph. And graph is for to make it simpler, is like it's just the people you know that you want to follow, right, that are connected to you. And this matters because this is what makes experiences social. If you log into an app and you don't know anybody there, you don't want to be there. It's like it's going to a party or a dinner party with a bunch of people that are strangers,
Yeah.
right? It's not very friendly. And so, with Farcaster, what we've done, and a huge credit to that team, is they've built something that is sufficiently decentralized. So, when you would log into Rodeo, and I cannot wait for more and more people to have this experience. Cal, I think you had this experience. You just log in and your
Yeah.
profile is there and your avatar is there. You don't set up your profile. You don't have to do that. And you go into the feed. You don't have to configure the feed.
Yeah.
And then I think everybody in your feed, right?
Yeah.
You're just
Super
like, yep,
powerful. Yeah. Super
it's really
powerful.
powerful. And I didn't have to call up Dan and sign a partnership agreement and get
Yeah.
to pay an API and do all this crap. It is permissionless. I just built it myself with my team, right?
Mm.
It works like magic, and no one can take it away from anyone,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's just very, very, very powerful. And I think it's making Rodeo something that is just very capable of growing. I mean, you can join Rodeo and be set up in seconds. And I think, I'm really excited, Cal. I guess I'll announce it here, but we'll be opening up Rodeo to all Farcaster users next week
Ooh.
because it's just that easy to log into Rodeo if you have a Farcaster account. There's no setup.
Okay, that's amazing. Actually, so the episode goes out next week from where
Great.
we are recording. So probably people can already sign up to Rodeo. Hopefully, it's gonna be out on Tuesday.
So we'll try to sync up, Callow, but I think what I would share is by the time this goes live, I don't think people should think of Rodeo as invite only. If you have a Farcaster account and you have friends on Rodeo, we've designed it so that it's very easy to get started and come in and find those people. And I think hopefully for many people in your community, it's going to be a first time where they really experience the magic of Web3 social networks,
Yeah.
right? You're not trapped on Farcaster. Farcaster can talk to any other network, and Rodeo's built on Farcaster, so it's really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. That's the main reason why I've been on Farcaster from early on, and I'm a big believer in the protocol. Another question, Kayvon, related to this one, it's from Sheena, and she's asking, how can Rodeo help small accounts or people that are just starting out, maybe on Farcaster or Rodeo, right? It's very early. Or what is Rodeo doing or planning to do to increase visibility for accounts?
So it's a social network, right? And I think the rules are very transparent, which is the two things that you can do to kind of get sort of impactful in the network is post content that people are excited about, right? Because that's what the network rewards, and or both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Collect pieces very early that are interesting that other people can discover through you. If you
Okay.
do those two things, right? So you're posting really interesting content that other people want to collect, that will get you, you know, influence and sort of be financially rewarded. And then also, if you're not someone who wants to post that often, you can collect. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you've had this experience, but if you're collecting early, and people are really enjoying what you're finding and it's new, right? It's not what everyone already knows.
Mm.
You bring new things into their feeds that is interesting and they mint it, right? You're compensated for that. And so I think it's a pretty interesting game for people. I don't think it's not Twitter. It's not Warpcast. It's really different. And so I think the network is designed in a really healthy way to kind of really promote good content.
Last question, Kayvon, and
Yes.
I think I asked you this last time you were on the podcast. Can you name artists or collectors or creators that you have discovered through Rodeo that people should look at? Maybe three, a combination of artists and collectors that, yeah, you discovered through Rodeo and people should follow.
You know, I think in my case, I really know a lot of people in the community, but I'll highlight two people that the way I frame it is I got to know them better.
Mm,
Because I think the really interesting thing about rodeo is how intimate it can become,
mm,
right? When you watch someone's process, you can see many different versions of a work and how they work through it and evolve it. So I really want to highlight that part of rodeo. As someone who's been very sort of instrumental in seeding the digital art market and then now seeding this new social network. I do know a lot of the people on it already. Um, but Tony Wallström is somebody I've been really impressed with. If you go to his profile on Rodeo, you can see that he starts off with a sketch,
Yeah.
and he shows you a sketchbook where he did the sketch, and you could,
Mhm.
and people minted that. And going back to scarcity, Kalo, not that many people minted it. They didn't know what it was going to become. And then now he has a very expansive series that he's been sharing on Rodeo. He's been sharing the whips and process pieces that he's been iterating on almost every day, or at least every other few days.
Yeah.
And so that, you can put that in the notes for people to go check out. It's really an incredible process. And he's also now gone on to sell very high end pieces on Foundation, um, because of the traction and sort of attention he's been able to get on Rodeo. So I think Tony's been a great, um, artist to watch and learn from. And then I think Anna Lucia
Mm.
on Rodeo. I think this is an artist that a lot of people know and appreciate. And I think you've just been able to really see her working style, her personality.
Yeah.
She's been able to share things, in a very much less precious way. And I think you get a better sense of her. And I think that's also really nice.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would really I would want to more emphasize, there is a lot of new artists to discover, don't get me wrong, but I think Rodeo for me personally, having been in the digital art market industry for 4 years now, it's actually about learning about people in more depth. I feel
Mm.
like I understand people, in even more depth, and I really love that. That's something that I didn't fully expect even when I designed the product, that I've really learned to appreciate.
Yeah. No, great names. I have collected pieces from both, from Anna and Tony, and you're
There you
right.
go.
They are sharing something different from what you're. So I've been following Anna for a while as well, but what she's
Yep.
posting on Rodeo, it's different. It's more like her process, right? And Tony, as you described.
And this is
Awesome.
powerful. I think Cal, like, I think that just to close out, I mean, it's just going back to these points we talked about. This is introducing net new behavior, net new content, net new information into Web3. And I would really challenge your audience to celebrate these moments. This is really powerful, and this is the work that I think is necessary to expand and grow and cultivate what we're trying to build.
Well, on that note, Kayvon, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time, and looking forward for the big opening of Rodeo.
Yeehaw!